Now, just a little warning before we begin that there will be major spoilers in this video for the second episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which means if you have not seen it yet and you don't want anything ruined, it is a really good time to click away. Okay, so even though this episode was called The Tribes of Tatooine, I feel like calling it Dances with Tuscans, not just because Boba Fett literally dances with Tuscan Raiders at the end, but it very much has that kind of vibe and feel of Dances with Wolves, where you have someone from a stranger in a strange land, as the first episode is called. You have them kind of befriended or found by this tribe, and then he ends up proving himself. And then eventually he becomes a part of the tribe and cares so much about the tribe that he goes out of his way to protect it and defend it. And in this episode, the Tuscan Raiders are very much feeling like, well, they feel like Native Americans, to be completely honest with you, where we learn that they have a lot of culture and tradition. And I thought it was really cool to see some of that culture and tradition, don't get me wrong. I loved learning that Tatooine once had oceans and that the Tuscan people go back to that time period and that they have now become tribes who roam the deserts, essentially, that they had to adapt to the changing world. And I thought the whole Boba Fett kind of psychedelic trip with the little lizard in the brain, I thought that was a really cool and unique way to have him, go on his little walkabout out into the desert and find his branch that he turned into a gaffy stick. I thought all of that was really, really cool and well done. As I talked about in my review for the last episode, we are really having the Tuscans recontextualized for us. We are really having a different side of them shown to us, that they are not these mindless savages that just attack random people. In fact, usually, as we see in this episode, it's the other way around. Usually they are the ones being provoked and defending themselves. And I did find that a little strange that this train going through the desert at, several hundred miles per hour just had to take pot shots at the Tuscan Raiders, that they, for some reason, thought they were savages just to either shoot at for sport or because they thought they were a legitimate threat. And speaking of that train, I'm not entirely sure what the Pikes are doing with it. It seems like they're bringing spice to Tatooine, obviously, and then distributing it via train instead of just flying it where you need to go. And I know that's a minor gripe, but, in Star Wars, when flight and, space travel are so commonplace, you always kind of wonder why you would use a train. We saw that in Solo, where they were using trains, and it's, it's one of those things. I understand they want to, bring in a cool set piece, but when you stop and really think about it, why are they using trains when they could just, save the time and fly to wherever they want to bring the spice? Unless there is a outside reason why they can't do that, which is entirely possible, I suppose. Either way, and kind of wrapping up my talk about Tatooine and the Tuscans, I do wonder how far down the rabbit hole we'll go with them. Will we maybe see behind the mask? Will we see what the Tuscan Raiders really are? Or will they forever remain a mystery? Will we learn more about what happened to Tatooine? And I think it is interesting that in the Aftermath novels, not that they necessarily care what happens in those books, as we've seen before, they kind of discard what they don't want from the books and comics. But anyway, in the Aftermath novels, we learn that Jakku was once a lush forest or jungle planet, and that at its core it has this light side nexus that they were trying to use to bring back Palpatine, but let's not get into all that. But anyway, we learned it was once a tropical paradise, essentially, and something happened and changed it. So I am wondering if Tatooine experienced something similar, if we will get a bigger story about Tatooine that could maybe continue into the Kenobi series, where obviously a good portion of the series, I'm thinking and kind of hoping, will take place, that maybe Obi-Wan will learn a little bit more about the planet. Now, I think that's a long shot, because how much do people really want to get into the history and lore of Tatooine? Plus, how much communication is there between the Kenobi series, and this one is always a question too. Anyway, for the most part, I did enjoy the flashback, or flashback, I'm going to call it, since it takes place while he's in the back to tank. It does seem to be setting up why he has a change of heart in the current timeline, or the, timeline where he is taking over for Jabba. It's trying to give him a little bit of motivation of why he cares so much about Tatooine, apparently, and why he's trying to rule with respect and not just be like Jabba and rule with fear and kill all his enemies and so forth. Though that said, I'm not entirely sure why his enemies don't just kill him. I mean, it's literally him and Fennec Shand and 2 Gamorrean guards and the droid 88. I don't really think they have anybody else. So if he's killed, it's not like there's going to be some huge uprising or somebody who's going to, try to seek revenge. Not that we know of anyway. And one of the big complaints about that first episode, of course, was the battle in the streets of Mos Espa, where these assassins from the Nightwind Guild, apparently, who are very skilled and, very good, they kind of surround him with shields and poke at him with energy weapons. And it's like, well, why didn't you just shoot him from afar? And why doesn't he just use his jetpack? I know there were a lot of complaints about that. And I totally agree it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you really stop and break it down, unless they didn't want to kill him. But again, why don't you want to kill him? He's just kind of in the way, and he doesn't have that whole entourage or anything. He doesn't have anybody else who's going to, pay you back if you kill him. In fact, it seems like very few people even know exactly who he is anymore. I don't know, I'm just kind of finding the formula here a little strange. Like I said, I do like the flashbacks. I think they are good, but we haven't spent enough time in the current timeline after 2 episodes to really get a grasp of what he is trying to do and why. And yeah, I know he's been changed by the Tuscans, and he probably cares about Tatooine, and he's a different person, obviously, after his experience in the desert. But still, we don't really know what he's trying to accomplish. Is he just trying to take over Tatooine? Is this something much bigger? Because we haven't left Tatooine yet, and I think that's one of the things I was hoping for. I thought this might be a little bit more epic in scope and scale, and it kind of is just a real personal story about Boba Fett, which, you might really like and you might not. And yeah, I know this is only the 2nd episode, and you can't judge the whole season by 2 episodes. We have 5 more to go, and I'm sure there will be people in the comments telling me to relax. It's going to get bigger and better as the series goes on. However, I would ask those people, would you really be into this show if it wasn't Star Wars, if it wasn't Boba Fett, if it wasn't all these places and things And the one person I've talked to about the series who's now seen both episodes, who isn't really a big Star Wars fan, and yes, this is anecdotal, but they've told me so far it's been pretty boring after they really, really loved The Mandalorian. So, I don't know what the casual fan is thinking. I don't know what the, non-fan is thinking who just happens to watch this. But, if it wasn't Star Wars, would you really be into this? And I think that's a hard question to answer for someone who is into Star Wars, who loves Boba Fett and who wants this to be terrific and is willing to give it the time to become terrific. I mean, I just watched Arcane, and I watched it in like 2 days because it hooked me from the first 5 minutes. And if you haven't seen that series, I cannot recommend it enough. And I am someone who doesn't know the first thing about League of Legends, and I don't want to get a review of Arcane going here, but I knew it was a video game, and that was it. And yet, after 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the first episode, I was all in, and I just had to keep watching and watching. And I do wonder if, is the Book of Boba Fett doing that or anything like that if you are a non-Star Wars fan? But anyway, as a Star Wars fan, as someone who is obviously going to give it the time, yes, I'm enjoying it. Yes, I like to see a story about Boba Fett, even if it's not exactly the story I thought we were going to get or even hoped we were going to get. I'm going to give it time. I think it will be, a great season when all is said and done. But, so far it has been a little slow, in my opinion. And if you disagree, that's completely fine. But anyway, as for some cool things I really enjoyed about the episode, well, it was cool to see some more Hutts, especially in live action. I thought the CGI looked pretty good. I also thought they needed a few more people carrying that litter. I didn't think they had quite enough to carry those 2 massive Hutts, but whatever. They were pretty cool, too, just in general. I like the weird kind of brother-sister lounging around with each other. Well, I shouldn't say I liked it, but I found it interesting. I also then really liked that we had Black Chrysanthemum in the episode, and I'm talking, of course, about the Wookiee bounty hunter / former gladiator that was with the twins. He is a character that is from the comic books, and so it's nice to see that, no, they don't always forget about the comic books, that they can embrace characters and ideas from there. I do hope he shows up again and does a little bit more. He does have some history with Boba Fett, and if you're curious about that history, I'm sure there are about 1,000 people making Black Chrysanthemum explained videos as I speak. But he is in the comic books with Dr. Aphra mainly. He's also in there with Vader. He's been in a few other places as well, so he's a really kind of cool character from the comics, and it's great to see them bring him in. And he's just a cool design, a bounty hunter, kind of gladiator Wookiee who just looks badass. So really hope they do a little bit more than just have him stand there and growl. And so in closing, I thought this was another good episode. I think the series has been good overall so far. I really enjoyed the world building aspect here. I enjoyed learning more about the Tuscans and their society and how they have a society, that they're not just mindless savages. I enjoyed the whole building of the gaffy stick, or the creation of it, the dance at the end, that he is now a part of the tribe. All of that I thought was really good. I just think we need a little bit more in the current timeline. We really need to know what is going on there already. I mean, is the main kind of antagonist of the series going to be the twins, the Hutt twins? Is there somebody above them? Is he going to draw more attention eventually? What is the deal with the mayor of Mos Espa? There's a lot of questions, and, we don't have to have them all answered in 2 episodes. I'm not saying that. but I still feel like we need a little bit more to chew on to really start getting into what's going on in the current timeline of the series. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this episode. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you bored? Are you super excited? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.